Story 1. Before I begin the story, just letting you know that there is OP's son's response to the post in the middle of the story, which explains the situation a lot, so please do watch the whole story to get the idea of what OP did was truly wrong. Ruined my perfect family. After my husband caught me cheating with my boss and went to prison for assault, now 7 years later he's out, while I'm all alone and my kids hate me. I'm a selfish person, at least that is what I say to myself repeatedly, almost every night when I hear the silence in my home. My children aren't here, my ex-husband hates me with good reason, my immediate family is divided, and I never stopped hating myself for what I did. My selfish act happened in 2015. I just turned 39, and I admit I took my ex-husband for granted. My ex always told me that I was beautiful on a daily basis, always wanted to have sex, always took care of me and treated me like his equal. He never treated me like a queen or a princess. I was his partner. We'd been married for 20 years by that time, high school sweethearts, each other's one and only, and it felt right. My family loved him. My brother looked up to him, and my ex helped him through a lot of tough situations. My ex was the one people called when they were in trouble, and he helped them. He was a good man. Through the years, I gave him 2 headstrong boys. At the time of this, they were 18, 16, and twin princesses 13. I gained weight and felt self-conscious, and he would tell me that I was beautiful. Our arguments were always few and far in between. We talked everything out, but when we did argue, it was usually about sex or lack thereof on my behalf, and the things I refused to do in bed. It wasn't as if I didn't want to do them. It's just that I wasn't in the mood, and he understood. When I turned 39, my birthday party was revealing the new me. I spent all year in the gym doing yoga and Pilates. My effort took me from being 180 to 135, and for me it was an amazing transformation. I've always been a chubby girl, so to have a body that was toned and fit was a new experience. My ex-husband also went to the gym with me, but not as much. However, he went from 260 to 225 and was starting to shape his body. My ex-husband couldn't keep his hands off of me, but for some reason, I still wasn't in the mood. It's not like he didn't try. We went to dinners, danced, and did regular walks. He always helped around the house, and I could see in his eyes how much he loved and lusted for me. 20 years together, and he still looked at me with desire. I believe any woman would desperately want that, but mentally, I just wasn't in the mood at the time. I thought I was going through early menopause since we only had sex 2, maybe 3 times a month, and I was just a one and done, but he wanted more, and no matter how much he tried, I just wasn't into it. He mentioned couple counseling, and I refused. So now my selfishness comes into play. A new manager started working in my office a few days after my birthday. He was slightly younger and handsome, and for some reason he took an interest in me. First, I ignored him. Then it went from ignoring to casual conversation. Then he flirted, and I showed him my ring. However, after 2 months of constant flirting, I flirted back, which led to me telling him about my life, and I found myself thinking about him more and more. This was an emotional affair. I know that now, but at the time I felt high. My ex-husband suspected there was something off with me. We had a heated argument about it, one that I honestly believe he started. He went to kiss me, and I subconsciously made a disgusted look. It wasn't towards my ex. I was thinking about this man when he leaned in, and I felt disgusted with the whole thing. At least that is what I say to myself. A week after that day, I told the new manager to meet me at a cafe so we can talk. I had every intention to tell this man to leave me alone, to tell him that I can't do this. But before I could say anything to him, he kissed me and my mind went blank. That was the beginning of our 6-month affair. During that time, I have done things to this man that my ex wanted. I was more eager, more willing. I was always in the mood. I believe it was because it was something new. My ex and I did have sex during this time, but not as frequently. I began pushing him away, nitpicking on the little habits. I even belittled him. I'm ashamed of how I treated him during that time. I only realized what I was doing when my brother came to visit me and told me that my ex confided to him about how depressed he was feeling and was thinking about filing a separation, saying that he felt that I don't love him anymore, and he was starting to fall out of love with me. And that snapped me out of it. So I immediately called it off, quit my job, and told myself that I was going to make my husband feel loved and wanted. I was going to fix this. I was going to be a better wife if I could. My AP showed up at my house with a box from my office, stuff from my desk that I requested to have shipped. We spoke. He wanted to know what he did wrong, and I told him that I needed to fix my marriage. I told him to leave, and he wanted one last go around, and I told him no. And he begged, pleaded, and like a fool I agreed. We went to the guest room and we went at it. I do not know how long we were doing it, but when he was on top of me, I felt him violently jerk back, and there was a loud bang. I sat up, and my ex was looking at me. My AP was on the floor, and there was a large hole in the wall. I tried to say something to my ex, but his eyes were bloodshot. There were tears flowing, and his lips were trembling. I could see he was in so much pain, and I felt so disgusted. I watched as my AP stood up and attempted to leave. My ex looked at him, and my AP told him that if he knew what was good for him, he'll step back. So my ex attacked him. I screamed and cried, telling my ex to stop, and out of desperation, I jumped on his back, which resulted in me getting slammed to the floor. Everything got hazy for a while. Words sounded muffled, but when I came through, my ex had my AP on his side, and he was on the phone. All I could do was stare at my AP's swollen face and the blood and teeth on the floor beside him. There was a loud bang on the door, and I watched my ex put the phone on speaker, slowly placed it on the floor, dropped to his knees, and placed his hands on the back of his head. The door opened, and the police came in, handcuffed him, and the paramedics came in moments later. I soon learned that he called 911 on himself. Everything went to in a handbasket at the hospital. My father didn't utter a word to me. He just looked at me with shame. My brother was yelling at me. He looked crushed, asking me how could I do that to my ex. My mother was consoling me, telling me that it was all right, which caused my father to yell at her. His family was furious. His sisters threatened, and his parents looked like they wanted to send me to an early grave. I approached my children, and they refused to speak to me. My sons couldn't even look at me. My AP was heavily injured and needed reconstructive surgery on his face. My ex practically shattered his face. At the hospital, a woman came to my room and immediately attacked me. My brother pulled her off of me, and it turned out she was my AP's wife. I didn't know he was married. He never wore a ring, never once said anything. It made me feel even more terrible. Leading to the trial, my boys stayed with their grandparents on my husband's side, and my girls refused to talk to me. My ex didn't want to see me as well. I tried to visit him at county, and I was denied. My brother made sure my ex went to the correctional facility he was working at so he could keep an eye on him. When I asked my brother if he could relay a message for me, he told me to go to hell. During the trial, it was the first time in months that I saw him. He looked at me with such anger. It hurt more than anything I could ever imagine. He always looked at me with love, even when we were mad at one another. He always looked at me with love, but during that trial it was hate, and I needed to excuse myself so I could cry in the restroom. As the days went by, I was forced to recount my affair and every detail for all to hear. When I told them how long it was, my ex looked crushed, and my father stood up and walked out of the courtroom. During my ex's testimony, I learned that he came home to surprise me with lunch and a weekend trip for 2 to the Catskills. He had a full romantic getaway planned, only to walk in on us, and he reacted. He stated when the AP ordered him to step aside, he snapped and beat him, only to stop when he tossed me off him. He quickly called 911 and heard the recording at court. Hearing the pain in his voice, his sobs as he did what the operator told him to do, it was so crushing. The AP couldn't verbally testify and was heavily medicated, so they used images of what he looked like, which turned my stomach because I was responsible for all this. My ex smashed his eye socket, cheekbones, and destroyed his jaw. They stated that there were bone fragments too small to piece together. My ex was charged with a third-degree felony and sentenced to 7 years, which caused my sons to shout and protest, and my daughters and his family to let out a wail that haunts me to this day. That first 3 months was torturous. I was sued by my AP's STBX wife for alienation of affection. My ex filed for divorce. My eldest moved out. My other son stayed in his room, and my twins were rebelling hard. My former sisters-in-law attacked me in the middle of Price Chopper. His mother spat in my face when I tried to apologize to her. My father and brother refused to speak to me. Eventually, I needed to find a new job. There was no money coming in, and I nearly went through the savings, but I was pretty much blacklisted in my field. It was bad publicity for the accounting firm, so I started working in retail and worked as a seasonal H in our block adjuster during the tax rush. I almost lost the house. My ex refused to allow me to visit him, and every letter was returned. Crying in the shower became an almost daily occurrence. My parents almost separated because my mother constantly defended me. My brother refused to acknowledge me. Even my friends, who I had since grade school, were divided. Soon, I began to have thoughts of ending things, of picking up my belongings and disappearing. The guilt was so heavy. Eventually, I saw a therapist and she scolded me, told me that I just got comfortable with my ex. I didn't see him as a husband. I saw him as a friend with benefits, and I treated him as much. She's right. I did. I got too comfortable with him. I saw him as a companion, yet he saw me as his wife, mother of his children, the woman he loved and desired. I took him for granted. Almost a year went by, a year of silence from my children. When I cooked dinner, they would collect their food and go to their rooms, refusing to even look at me. I did have a few meltdowns, begging them to say something to me, but nothing. My brother got married, and I wasn't invited. My kids were. I continued to try to visit my ex in hopes that he placed me on the visitor list, but I was always denied. My letters were still being returned. It made me severely depressed, and I knew I deserved it. Then one day, out of the blue, my brother showed up. I was shocked to see him and happy. This was the first time since the trial he came to my house, and he just came to scold me. Told me that my ex was in the infirmary after getting stabbed. An inmate tried to sexually assault him in his cell, resulting in my ex getting stabbed in his stomach and the inmate getting his spine broken. My brother screamed at me, "You did this," before going back to his truck. I cried for days after that because he was right. I did this. I tried to visit him at the infirmary, and I was still denied for 4 additional years. I tried to talk to him and still wrote letters, but they were returned. Thankfully, our children visited their father a lot. That is how I learned he was placed in protective custody by my brother since his attack. Through the years, my eldest went to the same college my ex attended and even took the same major. He only calls his siblings. He never wanted to talk to me. He never comes to the house for the holidays, only to his grandparents. My other son followed suit by going to the same college and refusing to call me as well. My twins were hard on me, but they visited their father weekly, which bettered their mood, and whenever they get overly rebellious, they had their uncle put them in their place. But my brother and I still hardly spoke. I tried to visit his wife when they had their first child, but I was asked to leave. My mother kept me in the loop on what was happening in their lives. My father still refused to acknowledge me. Then, at the beginning of May this year, my kids were happy, and my sons came home. I didn't know why, and I didn't care. They were home for 4 months. My children were around, and I did everything I could to show them how sorry I was, but I was mostly ignored. But they were talking to me, and it made me so happy to have a conversation with them, to know what was happening in their lives. My eldest was dating a woman for over a year. My second-born was on a college track team. Even my girls began to talk to me again, and I hated myself even more for what I did to them. Seeing them smiling again, joking, and eating dinner together, I missed it so much. At the end of August, I was all gearing up for the twins' first day of their senior year, which also falls on their 18th birthday. I expressed my excitement over their birthday party, told them what I was planning to do, and without hesitation, my girls asked me if we can do it on a different day. It confused me because I thought we were starting to get better. When I asked why, one of them said, "Because Dad is throwing us a party, and I don't want you near him." That comment shocked me. I asked when their father was released, and they said he got out at the end of April for good behavior. I cried because he was out, and it broke me a bit more. They were around more because he was out. They were happier and cheerful because they had their father back in their lives. It wasn't because we were starting to heal. They had him back. I asked where he was staying, and they told me that he was staying with my brother. I tried calling. I needed to talk to him, but he refused. I tried going over, holding all of the letters that were returned through the years, and I saw him briefly through the door crack. I shout out his name, and I was asked to leave by my brother. I handed him the letters and left. When I got to the driveway, I heard his voice. I turned around, and he was walking towards me. I instantly started crying and went to hug him, and he handed me back my letters. "You forgot this," he coldly said to me, and I cried watching him walk away. I begged him, I pleaded for him to just talk to me, and he just walked back into that house. My children were staring at me by the door, and they all had no love in their eyes for me. At that moment, I realized that my children were just tolerating me. However, I still want to fix this. I want to tell them how selfish I was. I want to tell him how much I missed him. Tell him that I am so sorry for destroying what we had. So I'm trying to still push through my daily life. I learned from my mother that my AP's ex-wife was visiting my ex 2 years ago, and she's been coming around to see him. I don't care really. I just want him to somehow forgive me. I want him to talk to me. I want him to be beside me. I want him to look at me the way that he used to. I want my kids beside us. I just want my family back. Yet I know I don't deserve it. Even by some miracle we become one again, it will never be the same. I was selfish and I wish I could take it all back. This is a response to my mother's post. My selfishness ruined my family. On support for Wayward, I'm a regular on Reddit, so I'm using a throwaway because I really don't want any of the people I know in my social life to know that this is me. I strive to keep my past a secret. My college friends don't know that my dad was in prison, nor do I care to tell them. So when I walked around campus and heard a lot of people talking about this post and sharing it, it brought back a lot of emotions that I have been trying to overcome. So I looked it up, and there was enough information provided to know that it was about my family, and it angered me. I reached out to my mother, who began with the damn waterworks, and I yelled at her. When I went to see my dad and told him what I did, he yelled at me. My father is a good man. He only yelled at me for cursing. My mother tells me that I may not love my mother, but I need to respect her. It's hard to respect someone like that. My father always struggled. He would drill into our heads that we should be grateful for growing up in an area where we wouldn't get attacked for getting good grades or getting caught reading by the kids who would jump you for wanting white things like going to college. He told us it was like that for him in the South Bronx. My aunts told us how he joined a gang at 13 just so he can be left alone while he went to school. When he was 15, his father passed away from cancer, and my father had to be a surrogate parent to his 2 sisters since there was no life insurance. He worked and did what he had to do in order to help pay the rent and put food on the table while still attending school. My dad said it was fortunate that his mother remarried a good man, and they moved to upstate New York for a better life. From what my uncle told me, he and his friends thought my dad was weird. It was the 90s, and my dad walked into school with really baggy clothing and a Puerto Rican flag shirt, and they decided to mess with him. My uncle said they didn't expect my dad to instantly fight them, and he kicked their asses. But instead of walking away, my dad helped him up and asked if he wanted to skip school, share a 40, and talk things out. My uncle said when my dad did that, he knew they were going to be friends, and they started hanging out. He introduced him to my mom, and they hit it off. They went to the same college, and by the end of their freshman year, they married. Growing up, my parents were the lovey-dovey couple. They were always holding hands, kissing, and it was really embarrassing. Even at the start of my senior year, when everything went to hell, he was acting like a teenager when it came to my mom. He loved her, respected her. I can honestly say he never placed her on a pedestal. He would lecture me that a woman will not respect a man who placed them on a pedestal. And when I asked why, he said, "Because they will always be looking down on you." My dad told me that his father and stepfather had the same mindset. You treat your wife as your equal. She is your best friend. She is your confidant, like you are hers. My dad had his quirks. He was a big guy and always joking. 5 feet 11 inches, 260 pounds, and despite being heavy, he was very active. I used to love it when he would sing to my mom. We all did. He would serenade her. He would buy her flowers and write on the card, "Because it's a Thursday, and I was thinking about you." He wrote her the occasional love letter and would defend her honor when someone was rude or disrespectful to her. Always told her how beautiful she was. My dad showed the girls what kind of a man they should have in their lives. When it came to my uncle, my dad was always there for him, even when everyone thought he was a lost cause. My dad never gave up on him, and as my grandfather once said, "Knock the stupid out of him and leave behind the man he was supposed to be." That phrase always made me laugh. My dad showed me how a man, a friend, and a husband are supposed to act. And my mother, before her affair, always loved my dad. He always supported her and encouraged her. He was her one-man pep rally when she was down in the dumps, and she was his to all of us. They had the marriage we wanted to have. Then my mom messed it up. I remember those months. She would talk to my father as if he was beneath her, and he pushed back but restrained himself. Even though my father graduated college and has a successful career as a financial advisor, he can go from zero to ghetto in 5 seconds. Grandma said he was like his father, kind, respectable, and helpful, but wouldn't hesitate to rip your throat out with his bare hands. My dad tried everything, buying her flowers, trying to take her out to dinner, dancing, but she was in her own little world, treating him like we all saw it. It was really having a big effect on my brother and twin sisters, but my dad would smile and tell us that they will work it out. He would tell us that mom was probably really stressed at work and bringing it home, and I believed that, especially when she quit her job. I honestly thought it was her job that was the problem. Then my dad was arrested. Mom, do you know the embarrassment we felt when the entire school was talking about what happened? My dad was arrested because my mom couldn't keep her legs closed. I couldn't bear to look at you, which was why I went to stay at Grandma's house. The sight of you disgusted me, and when I visited Dad, he couldn't bear to look at me. He was ashamed. He told me he failed as a husband and failed as a man. I told him he didn't, but he said he did because a man would have thought about the consequences of his actions before doing something so stupid, and he failed as a husband because his wife loved another man. I told him to please look at me, and he wouldn't. Then you had the audacity to ask us for forgiveness, and for the first time in my life, I wanted to physically hurt you. We all were hurting, and you wanted forgiveness. When I sat in that trial, listening to that 911 call, was the worst 25 minutes of my life. 25 minutes listening to my father, who would have killed and died for you, crying, asking the operator for help, telling the woman that he thinks he just killed someone. Listening to that woman talking him down while hearing him say over and over, "The love of my life cheated on me," hurt us more than anything. I know you tried to act as a character witness for Dad. We all told you not to do it, and you did it anyway. Why did you want to show us that you still loved him? Tell the court that he's a good man because, in my opinion, that cross-examination where you told everyone how long you were with that son of a bitch was why we lost him, why he was sent to jail. And I believe if we had an actual lawyer instead of an appointed one, he would have walked. I had anger issues because of that. My brother became a closet alcoholic. One of the twins was suicidal and you didn't notice. All you wanted was to try and fix things with Dad, leaving me to keep my siblings afloat. I hated you. In some way, I still do. When I went to college, I wanted nothing to do with you like my father. I had to be a surrogate parent to my siblings. I was working a full-time job, going to college, and sending you money to help pay for the bills. I don't know why you made it look like you were doing it on your own. Mom, I know it was hard. I know you were really depressed, but you had help with the bills, and Grandma did defend you, but she only did it because everyone was against you. At least that is what the twins believe. When Dad got stabbed, I almost had a nervous breakdown. I just saw him that day. I was poking fun at how muscular he got, and we had a good laugh on what Dad called the prison body plan. He made it sound like a fun commercial. I was halfway back to school when I got the phone call. I nearly crashed the car because my brain turned off. It was hard for everybody. I didn't tell anyone this, but I sat outside the Saab's apartment. I wanted to wake him up so badly, but when I saw him walking with that cane, I remembered what Dad said and drove off. As the years passed, Grandma died, then Grandpa a few days later from broken heart syndrome, and Dad couldn't attend the funeral. Did you know that both his sisters got married in the waiting area just so he could give them away? The damage you've done to all of us is tremendous, and it didn't help that you kept asking us to forgive you, to give you another chance. You never gave us room to comprehend, to heal. You just kept asking, and all I see is that you wanted to make yourself feel better. You didn't give a damn. You didn't try. You just gave us space and acted as if we were supposed to suddenly act like we were normal again. Yes, you did try in the later years, but didn't during the time you were supposed to, when it was the most important. When Dad got out, he told us to start talking to you. Told us that you're a good mother to us, and therefore we should show you some respect. So we did, and it made you happy for a while. I remembered what it was like not to hate you. Dad was having issues trying to find work at first, but one of his old clients hired him. I didn't expect the twins to throw that bomb at you. Dad did not want you to know he was out, so when you appeared, it really bothered him. He threw up after he spoke to you. He said the very sight of you sickened him. As for your statement in your post about that ex-wife coming to see Dad, she's been coming to see Dad weekly for over 3 years, and they've been spending time together since he got out. So please stop building a castle in the sky of the two of you getting back together. If you want to talk about this, call me. You want to fix things with your children, call me. What you did last week, posting what is arguably the worst moment in our lives, is pure selfishness, as your title suggested. I told Dad about this, and he doesn't care. He said you're just the mother of his children, nothing else. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. I cheated on my military husband on our 3rd anniversary, so this happened. Do you take Elijah Davis as your lawfully wedded husband? The officiating priest turned to me. There was silence as I didn't respond to his question. The officiating minister repeated the question, asking if I accepted Elijah Davis as my lawfully wedded husband. Despite my strong desire to refuse, I reluctantly said yes, influenced by the pressure of my parents. I concealed my inner turmoil on our wedding day, presenting an impression of happiness while silently suffering. The memory of that day, filled with anguish, still haunts me strongly even after 3 years of marriage. What makes it even more challenging is that Elijah was aware of my inner struggles yet chose to maintain the appearance of a happy couple. So I decided to get revenge. Little did I know that my stupid plan would cause a lot of consequences in the long run, which was unexpected. As the months turned into years after our wedding day, the weight of my decision to marry Elijah became increasingly burdensome. I sought comfort in the company of a man named Liam, a charming and rebellious figure who seemed to understand the turmoil within me. We started our extramarital affair discreetly, meeting in secret locations to avoid any prying eyes. Little did I realize that my actions would set off a chain of events that would not only change my life but also the lives of those around me. The affair had started as a misguided attempt at revenge, a way to cope with the emotional unrest that had festered since our ill-fated wedding day. However, the consequences were far more severe than I could have anticipated. Elijah, my military husband, was deployed overseas during our 3rd anniversary. It was during this time that I succumbed to the temptation of seeking comfort elsewhere. The affair remained a closely guarded secret until an unexpected turn of events thrust it into the open. I was lonely and needed companionship, however. I was naive to the consequences of my actions. My affair with Liam started one evening when I was bored and decided to cool off my head at a nearby bar. When I got there, the dim lights and low hum of conversations set the perfect atmosphere for escaping the harsh realities of my life. I ordered a bottle of vodka, hoping it would drown the sorrows that clung to me like a second skin. Lost in my thoughts, I became fixated on my phone, where I went to YouTube to watch some videos. Suddenly, I noticed a random guy staring at me. His gaze, intense and penetrating, felt like it could pierce through my skin. He said nothing while remaining fixed in his position. The discomfort I felt grew, and I finally mustered the courage to confront him. "What is it?" I asked abruptly, still fixated on my phone. "You are staring too much. It's creepy, and it's making my skin crawl." He smiled mysteriously and casually slid into the seat beside me. I wanted to ignore him, but his presence was magnetic, impossible to dismiss. "Did you have anything you want to say?" I muttered, my voice tinged with irritation. "Or maybe you just decide to stand hovering over me for no reason." "I mean no harm, pretty lady," he finally muttered. Well, your presence is distracting. I'm busy here, and I'll need no disturbance, I retorted, hoping he'd take the hint. The guy, whose name turned out to be Liam, laughed lightly. Ah, yeah, of course, he nodded abruptly. I do. You don't need to say much. Okay, if you can excuse me then, I said in a drawling tone, expecting him to yield. I'm afraid I can't. His voice was as calm as still water. I raised my head, my gaze now fixated on him. You can't, I asked, a hint of defiance in my tone. Liam continued to smile, his eyes holding a mysterious glint, as if he knew something I didn't. His reply was calm but cryptic. Because you might need some company, especially in a place like this, and I find you intriguing, he said, his voice low and smooth. I scoffed, rolling my eyes while dismissing his statement with a wave of my hand. Intriguing, really? That's your excuse for invading my personal space? I don't need company, especially not from a stranger. Well, sometimes strangers turn out to be better company than people you know, Liam said, taking a sip from his own drink. The intensity in his gaze remained, and it was as if he could see right through me. I sighed, realizing that arguing with him might be futile. I turned my attention back to my phone, attempting to drown out his presence. Liam, however, seemed undeterred. You know, people come to bars to socialize, not bury themselves in virtual worlds, he remarked, glancing at my phone. And people should mind their own business, I retorted, growing more irritated by the second. Liam leaned in closer, his breath warm against my ear. But what if I told you I could offer you a different kind of distraction? I shot him a skeptical look. I highly doubt that. He grinned, undeterred by my skepticism. Why don't you give it a chance? What do you have to lose? I hesitated, torn between annoyance and curiosity. Liam's persistence was both infuriating and intriguing. Fine, entertain me, I said with a hint of sarcasm. Despite my initial resistance, I found myself fascinated by his confidence. The bar atmosphere, the dim lighting, and the faint hum of conversations provided a bizarre backdrop to our interaction. Against my better judgment, I invited him to join me reluctantly. You can have a seat, but keep your distance. Liam chuckled, settling into the chair with an easy grace. The conversation flowed, and as much as I tried to stay distant, his appeal began to weave its way into my thoughts. We shared stories, laughter, and even a few secrets, creating a connection that was both unexpected and undeniable. And so, our conversation continued, weaving through topics that ranged from our ordinary lives to profound discussions. The vodka worked its magic, wrapping us in a fuzzy bubble and shielding us from the reality waiting outside the bar. As the night wore on, I forgot about my loneliness and the reasons that led me to the bar in the first place. Hours passed, and the bar started to empty. Liam suggested we take a stroll outside, and without much thought, I agreed. The cool night air hit my face, clearing the fog in my mind. I suddenly became aware of the choices I had made and the consequences they might carry, but I brushed it off. My mind found solace in the hands of another man, and that was what mattered at that moment. Ever since that night, I started a romantic affair with Liam, and we were so discreet about it. We only met whenever the need arose. I didn't do my research about Liam, who he was, what he did for a living, who his family were. All I knew about him was that he was a very caring person with a charming personality. My foolishness later caught up with me on my marriage anniversary. Elijah's deployment was cut short due to unforeseen circumstances, and he surprised me by arriving home earlier than expected. The day Elijah returned from his 7-month military deployment was supposed to be a celebration of our 3rd anniversary. Little did he know the surprise reunion would take a dark turn. The joy of his return was short-lived as he heard funny sounds coming from our bedroom. He opened the door and couldn't believe his eyes. I was sitting naked in the bed with Liam, kissing me all over my body. When Elijah barged into us, the shock on my face was evident, and more than his, because I didn't believe Elijah would surprise me with his return without informing me ahead. I had called him that morning to greet him, and we talked about our marriage anniversary. Even though I didn't love him that much, I'm connected to him in a way because he was still my husband. He told me he would return home in 2 months, and we would throw a small party for our marriage anniversary. He told me all this on a phone call with him, and I didn't suspect anything from his words. So I called on Liam to keep my company in the house. Liam soon arrived, and we started our chit-chat. One thing led to the other. He kissed me, and we started an intense makeout session. We were so engrossed in it that we didn't hear the sound of Elijah's boot as he barged in on us. His military boots echoed through the silent hallways of our home. The tension in the air was intense as he pushed open the bedroom door, catching me and Liam red-handed on our marital bed. Shock and disbelief etched across Elijah's face as he processed the scene before him. Elijah, a dedicated and disciplined military man, confronted me with a mixture of hurt and anger. The pain in his eyes was deep as he demanded an explanation for my betrayal, but I was lost for words and didn't know what to say. In a fit of anger, Elijah stormed out, leaving me to face the consequences of my actions. For an entire week, he did not return home, leaving me to wrestle with the guilt and remorse that had consumed me. I tried reaching out to him through calls and text messages, but he didn't reply to any of my messages. I had underestimated the depths of my husband's military connections. In a vengeful move, he dispatched some of his military comrades to deal with Liam. Little did he know he had unwittingly provoked a force far more dangerous than he could have imagined. Liam, unbeknownst to me and Elijah, led a gang with a reputation for ruthless retaliation. The gang, feeling the sting of their leader's humiliation, descended upon our home seeking revenge. In the ensuing chaos, Elijah confronted me about my extramarital affair. His anger turned into disbelief as the gang members barged in. The room echoed with gunfire as the gang unleashed a hail of bullets on my unsuspecting husband. 7 shots to the chest silenced the room, leaving Elijah lifeless on the floor. As quickly as they came, the gang fled, leaving me to face the grim aftermath. My husband fell victim to the chaos. The initial shock and disbelief clung to the air as I struggled to comprehend the horrifying turn of events. My life had been shattered right in my face. It was a devastating moment for me as I held on to the lifeless body of my husband. I wept bitterly and rolled on the floor, wailing for help. If I had known this would be the outcome of events, I wouldn't have betrayed the trust Elijah had in me. I still hadn't had the chance to tell him sorry. I never had the chance to tell him the turmoil I was feeling inside me since we got married, and to let him know I never really loved him. At least he deserved to know the truth before he died. The police arrived, and the reality of the situation set in. I was arrested and charged with murder. Statements were taken, evidence was collected, and the wheels of justice began to turn. However, as the investigation unfolded, the deeper, darker layers of Liam's involvement and the intricate web of his criminal activities started to emerge. He and his gang were also arrested after several attempts by the police officers to catch them. Liam, in his statement, lied that I was the one that sent him to kill my husband. In the confines of the courtroom, the air was thick with tension as the legal proceedings unfolded. The court was crowded with onlookers, reporters, and curious spectators eager to catch a glimpse of the sensational trial that had gripped the community. The prosecution painted a damning picture of me, portraying me as the mastermind behind a heinous plot to murder my husband, Elijah. They presented Liam's evidence, a fake voice note provided by him, allegedly containing instructions for me to carry out the murder. My defense team, aware of the uphill battle they faced, tirelessly worked to dismantle the prosecution's arguments. They questioned the authenticity of the voice note, pointing out its lack of concrete evidence and highlighting the possibility of manipulation. They argued that Liam, facing his own legal troubles, had every reason to lie and shift the blame on me. However, the circumstantial evidence coupled with the emotional impact of Elijah's tragic death weighed heavily against me. As the trial progressed, the truth became entangled in a web of lies and deceit. The legal battle intensified, with my lawyers presenting alibis, character witnesses, and any evidence they could muster to prove my innocence. Yet, the prosecution maintained a relentless pursuit, using every opportunity to cast doubt upon my innocence. The turning point came when Liam, facing the mounting pressure of the trial, decided to cut a deal with the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence. He doubled down on his false testimony, claiming that I had coerced him into confessing to a crime he did not commit. The court, swayed by the seemingly corroborated evidence, dealt a severe blow to my defense team. Faced with the grim prospect of a lengthy trial and the mounting weight of the evidence against me, I made a gut-wrenching decision. I pleaded guilty, admitting to a crime I strongly denied committing. The judge, with a stern expression, sentenced me to life imprisonment, closing the chapter on a tragic tale of betrayal and revenge. Liam, on the other hand, was sentenced to death. I was left to navigate the complex emotions that accompanied the loss of Elijah and the revelation of my transgressions. The journey ahead seemed overwhelming, marked by grief, guilt, and the harsh glare of public scrutiny. The consequences of Liam's actions and the irreversible damage inflicted on our lives became the haunting legacy of that fateful night. In the cold confines of my prison cell, I recount these ugly memories, hoping that my story serves as a cautionary tale for those entangled in the dangerous dance of infidelity. The consequences of my choices reached far beyond my shattered marriage. It was a tragic reminder that sometimes the price of betrayal is more than one can bear. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My friend, 30M, just got married, but I, 28F, did not attend because my crazy ex/stalker boyfriend, 28M, was going to attend. I received the online save the date and, of course, replied yes. Then I was scrolling through the guest book and saw my ex's name. When I saw his enthusiastic reply of yes, my heart figuratively stopped. I felt cold inside, and I started hyperventilating. This man abused me for months, isolated me from my friends and family, used me for money and sex, and then cheated on me. He made me feel crazy for confronting him about his drug use, about the girls hanging around him. I eventually stopped asking him because I wanted to keep him happy. When he moved away for a few months and we were long distance, he had friends that would report back to him if I went out with friends. He would confront me on our Skype chats about me being out with guy friends on chaperone and would forbid me to go out without a chaperone. I eventually caved and didn't go out with any of my friends unless they were the girls he knew, or I just stayed home. I lost contact with many friends and my family, but then we were engaged, and something broke in me when I realized I would have to give up everything to be with him. I envisioned myself either dead or wanting to be dead when I saw our future together. When I finally broke it off for good with him, he had previously installed a key logger into my phone and computer, is that the official term? And was able to see everything I sent and did. He threatened suicide if I didn't talk to him, so I said go right ahead and notified his mom he was making threats against his life. I told her that if he contacted me again, I was going to the cops. She said she would take care of it. A few nights later, I went to a late movie by myself and got a call saying he was right outside my apartment. He saw my light on and just wanted to talk. I was not there at the time. He had a history of stalking and previous allegations of abusing his ex-girlfriends. The next day, I started the proceedings to get a restraining order out on him. Fun fact, they are really hard to get. The order of protection was granted for 1 year, and I have moved on. I got a new laptop, phone, and changed my address. He was blocked on Facebook, and I deleted all of our mutual Facebook friends so they couldn't report back to him on me. Now, seeing him RSVP to a mutual friend's wedding threw me off kilter. My current boyfriend was unable to attend with me, work, so I didn't want to go alone. I meant to email the groom and explain how I didn't want my drama to overshadow his wedding, and that he may not have been aware of the crazy ex-drama that happened a couple of years ago, but I saved it as a draft and never dealt with it. I pushed it back to my mind and was focusing on work and school, but I got the email reminding me about the wedding. I didn't know what to do and did not show up. I sent the newly married couple an Amazon package from their wedding registry with my apologies and offers to take them out to dinner after their honeymoon. But I don't know how to ask him now. Questions. How do I bring this up to the groom? How do I explain why I didn't reply and why I didn't show up? Do I go into detail about the horrible things my ex did? Do I show them a copy of the restraining order? Do I just continue to ignore and later message the groom to just take them out for dinner? Relevant comment. Slyn from OP on her friendship with the groom. Technically, the ex was friends with the groom before I met him. They were church buddies when they were young, but my ex moved away when he was a teenager, and I met the groom in college. His sister and I were in choir together in high school. My hometown is small, and we bonded over a love of rock music. So, time-wise, the ex knew him longer, but I think I know him better as an adult. I did decrease my contact with the groom after the breakup because I did think the same thing. How could he be friends with such a monster? I cut contact with all the people who were friends with the ex because I didn't know if they would report back to the ex, but I would still go to his rock shows and occasionally text him until he got really serious with his now wife, and then we just sort of followed each other on Facebook. If I tell the groom about what happened to me, would it decrease my chances of seeing the ex again? I don't ever want to see the ex again in this lifetime or the next. Part of me was hoping he was dead or in jail. How do I stop trying to please everyone? It's a personal issue I've worked on after this whole debacle. But it's this whole obedient daughter mindset. I grew up with that. I'm rewarded eventually for bending over backwards to please everyone around me. Comments on why the groom didn't know about the abuse and how her ex got away without anyone knowing. He didn't know about the abuse. I just told him it was an ugly breakup, and he had said he was sorry the ex and I were no longer together because we had made such a good couple. I was such a good influence on him, etc. My ex is very good at manipulating people. The man has a high school degree but is a whiz at technology things. He was a part of the anonymous group that hacked into things and was very smoozy when in groups. He had that way of talking to people that made him very popular. He's a horrible person, but his dad abused his mom growing up, so I guess it was part of him. It made it normal to him to abuse me and all his other past girlfriends. Date 1. Thank you to all that gave me solid advice and nice PMS. You all are very nice, and I appreciate you all. Special thanks to you/left is Ask2398 for the amazing advice, and I've saved her//'s comment. So, I took the advice of some to call my friend rather than an impersonal email or Facebook message and left a nice voicemail offering to take him and his wife to dinner and apologizing for missing their wedding. He called back and squeezed me in their packed schedule before they leave for their honeymoon. I saw them last night for dinner. I gave them hugs and apologized again for missing their wedding. The groom said he vaguely remembered the bad breakup and the restraining order but said he thought enough time had passed because the order of protection had expired. He also said they sent out the invites and saved the dates in waves, and the ex and I were in different waves. He said he thought we could put aside our issues for one day for a special day. He said he had invited family members that didn't get along with one another with the expectations that everyone could put aside their issues for his wedding. I told him I didn't want to see the ex ever again, especially being alone at the wedding, and wasn't comfortable at all attending. My friend acknowledged this, and then we had a good dinner and caught up since our college days. They confirmed they had received my many gifts the day after their wedding. Then, they said the ex RSVP'd and volunteered to be the sound guy/MC and sound system, but did not show up. My friend had to man the sound system on his own wedding day. The groom and bride said they would have rather me show up than the ex. We have plans for me to see their house when they return from their honeymoon and hang out more frequently. They have an incredible collection of board games. It was a great dinner. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My religious stepmom estranged me from our family because I got an abortion, so I blasted her on social media and ruined her life. I was 14 years old when my parents got a divorce, and it marked the beginning of my traumatic future. They never got along, and it was a work in the books for years, so when it happened, no one was surprised. I asked my dad for the reasons, but he always told me that mom wanted a break, even though he was given full custody of us. I reached out to my mom a few times, but she gave me the same answer, that she would be back soon, but she never came back. As hard as I tried, my mom faded away from my life, and the only thing I could do was move on. My dad moved on as well, and a year later he found himself back to dating. They eventually got married, and I think their wedding was the worst day of my life. She married our dad and thought she ran the place. Throughout high school, she wouldn't let me touch any guy because, according to her, I would end up in hell. I got my dad to argue against her, but it was no use. She brainwashed my dad and told him that he was helping me sin, so he'd be responsible for my downfall. She also didn't let me wear any makeup throughout high school, and she reasoned that our bodies do not belong to ourselves. They belong to God, so we cannot ruin it. I didn't try arguing with her because she kept using the religious card, which I didn't have an answer for. I put everything to the side and focused on my studies. I did well enough to get accepted into the Ivy League, and my dad wanted to throw a graduation party for me. I thought the event was about me, but instead, my stepmom spent the entire time boasting about how I was able to do it only with her help and that she had full responsibility for my success. She even went so far that she asked for everyone's attention and said a toast. She said, "I think everyone should be grateful to God that He sent me to this chaotic family, and I helped them become the best versions of themselves." I didn't want to ruin my occasion, so I didn't say anything back. I eventually left for college, and I truly felt like a bird being freed from a chamber. I kept close contact with my dad and stepmom, but I didn't let them control me. I was able to enjoy every moment of college and went to many parties there. I met my boyfriend, who I thought would be my husband, but little did I know that he was my biggest mistake. At one of the parties, my boyfriend and I got too drunk, and things went crazy. We usually remember about protection, but this time we were too drunk to remember anything, so that night I got pregnant, and life turned to its worst. I tried talking to my boyfriend about it, but he said that he had no intentions of keeping the child. I initially showed doubt about getting an abortion, and this set him off because he confessed that he was in a different relationship and left me for her. We had a huge argument about how he had used me to pass his classes, but it ended up with him leaving to go after his new girlfriend. Devastated, I went back to my parents' house, thinking I could get comforted there, but I was very wrong. I told them how I wanted to abort the child because I wanted to focus on my studies and that the child had no dad. My dad was fully on board and stayed with me the entire time, but my stepmom had different ideas. When I told her that I was pregnant, she was ecstatic. She started thinking of what to name the child, but then I told her I was going to get an abortion. She was holding plates and dropped all of them on the floor. She took it personally and started proving to me how I was satanic by doing so. She told me that a child was the best gift and that I shouldn't take it for granted, but I told her that I was living my life and making my own decisions. She asked me if I was sure that I wasn't going to listen to her, and I said yes. She demanded that I leave the house, but my dad didn't let me. They had a short argument and they finally let me decide. I told them that I had my appointment set and that it was in a few days, and my stepmom showed clear disappointment. I went back to college where I was also supposed to get my abortion. From that point on, I noticed a strange isolation from my family. My dad reached out to me at least 3 times a week, but he suddenly changed to calling me once a week. I was also expecting to celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas with them, but they didn't invite me to either. I asked my dad about it and he said how they visited his wife's family, and they thought I wouldn't like it. I told him that he could have at least warned me, but he said that he forgot. It was clear that I was being cut from the family, and what hurt most was seeing my dad turn away from me after I got my abortion. I posted on my social media how abortion was the best decision of my life, even though I was estranged. I got many messages about what had happened, so I made a summary and posted it as well. I let everyone know that my family cut me off because I chose to get an abortion. As soon as my parents saw my posts, chaos unfolded, and I was glad to finally get revenge on my evil stepmom. Update. My stepmom had been controlling me throughout high school, and I was finally able to become independent when I moved out for college. My boyfriend then completely violated me because he got me pregnant and immediately left me. I told my parents that I was going to get an abortion, and my stepmom despised me for it. They estranged me from the family and didn't invite me for Thanksgiving or Christmas. I posted about it on my social media, and soon enough my family saw it. I got a call from my dad asking me about the post and demanding that I delete it. I told him that they abandoned me and excluded me on my darkest days, showing no support. My dad then started whispering on the call and said, "Look, I know, but your stepmom is next to me. Please play along." I then snapped and told him to man up and step up against my stepmom. He said that he needed some time to think, and I hung up. I couldn't believe my dad was thinking whether he should side with me or his wife. A few days later, my dad asked me to come back to their house for a discussion. I went there 2 days later, and this was the biggest argument I had been in. My stepmom didn't even greet me when I entered through the door and started crying in front of me. She broke the silence when she said that I was a baby unliver, and I didn't deserve a day in heaven. I was already so used to her abuse and, quite honestly, just fed up. I decided to completely ignore her and turn to my dad. I gave him an ultimatum. I said that either it was me or her. My stepmom gave him a deadly glare. My dad was obviously a bit flustered and didn't know what to say. He said that he needed a few days to think about it, but that didn't settle it for me. I stormed out of the house and warned him that I would cut him out of my life if he didn't decide soon. After going 2 days without a reply, I went back to their house and was soon greeted by my dad. I asked him if he made up his mind, and he said that he made his final decision. He then sat me down and showed me the divorce papers. I hugged my dad and felt how hurt he was, but I was proud of him. I promised that I would take care of him. A few days later, I got a call from stepmom, and all she did was go on a rant about how the devil will take me. I told her how she should worry about herself and to never contact me. Today, even though my dad is heartbroken, I am sure that he will be okay. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My fiancé cheated with several men, including a sex offender, so I took my revenge. After being asked by many people why that wasn't posted to Nuclear or Pro Revenge, I have decided to try again. Moderators at Pro explained why it didn't qualify and suggested Nuclear, but it never posted after my submission. I think maybe it was because my account was only days old, so fingers crossed it works this time. I met my ex in 2012, right after I had just turned 30. I had only dated and been with women exclusively until I came out as bisexual at 28. Let's just say the year I was 29 was a busy year making up for what I missed out on. It was mostly casual hookups, yes, safe, and I did try dating 2 different guys for a few weeks, but it just never worked out or got serious. I kind of figured that I'd probably end up marrying a woman or not getting married at all because I just didn't see myself catching romantic and sexual feelings for a guy. Then I met Ryan. From the first date, it was just like the only other time in my life I had fallen in love. Butterflies, constantly thinking about him, wanting to spend every moment with him. He fell for me hard too, and we became an item. Though he did say while he considered my bisexuality a turn-on because he had a thing for straight guys, it also gave him pause because of my desires for the opposite sex and his concern it may lead me astray. I thought about it and understood it was a legitimate worry, but assured him that I couldn't even think about anyone else because I was really into him. Note, I knew he was the one by the end of the first month, and I was in love, but I wasn't going to say these things too soon and risk scaring him off. On our first date, he admitted to me that he was legally blind due to a genetic disorder and that it was progressive and eventually he would only have a sliver of his peripheral vision. He immediately said he understood if I didn't want to see him again because no other guy had wanted to date him and be his driver all of the time. I grew up with a brother in a wheelchair who never learned how to walk or talk due to misdiagnosed meningitis at 6 months old back in the 70s. I told him that and said that what my brother had was a severe disability, so in my perspective, his blindness had no effect on my feelings and that always being the driver was a small sacrifice just to be with him. The following years were bliss. We brought out the best in each other. My family, who was surprised but very supportive when I came out, adored Ryan and treated him like family and said that I acted happier since we'd been together. When I met him, he was working part-time in retail and had done very poorly in high school because he lost a lot of his confidence as his vision deteriorated. I told him that one thing I did insist on was that he do something with his life because he had too much to offer and that I would help. He said that he'd wanted to be a teacher but didn't think someone with limited vision could teach. Nonsense. So I put him through community college for 2 years, then 2.5 years of a local university, and finally the 1-year teacher certification program as required by California. I drove countless miles and paid hundreds in public transportation costs for him, never blinking an eye or complaining. We'd been together for 7.5 years and were engaged to be married in October by the time he was in his last semester of his teaching certification, which involved him student teaching at his former high school with his favorite teacher from his days in school. Then the pandemic hit and schools closed. Fortunately, he'd had enough hours in the classroom that he would still qualify to be certified after the governor issued a waiver via executive order on the 3rd day of the stay-at-home order in March. My life crumbled when I innocently found out he had cheated on me with an ex, all because he handed his phone to me to show me something on Instagram. I accidentally fat-thumbed the back arrow when he gave it to me, taking me back to a list of all his messages. I looked and recognized the name of his ex as the second message dated a week ago. Clicked on it, and my heart sank. Directions to my house, pictures, dirty talk, and reassuring him not to worry about me because he had my location on my Find My Friends just in case I came home from work. I immediately started screaming, demanding to know everything, and he admitted to having his ex over twice for sex and that they didn't use protection. His ex was engaged to his GF during this, adding another victim. Then he admitted to sleeping with his straight but curious, recently single cousin by marriage twice, again no protection. Finally, he admitted to sleeping with a supposedly straight guy he and many of my cousins went to school with, who I told Ryan I really didn't like him or want them talking because I didn't trust him after what I'd read about him since they were never close friends. I didn't feel like this was a big sacrifice or that I was being too controlling, and I assumed that he knew why I and all my cousins felt that way but didn't bother repeating it. The reason was, after high school at age 20, this guy was convicted of sexual assault and penetration with a foreign object against a 16-year-old girl and had gone to jail and required to register as a sex offender for life. Apparently, my ex was the only person in his graduating class that hadn't heard that news. All of this happened in my home while I was working. We spent the whole weekend crying, with me asking over and over why and him repeatedly crying and saying he just didn't know and that he felt terrible. Monday comes around and anger started being as common as sadness, and I made a comment that said I was going to pull all the phone records going back the 3 years that AT&T kept them for a fee. Only when he heard that did he admit to one more guy, some random named Frankie off the gay hookup app Grindr, who was the first guy he cheated with and continued to casually hook up with for nearly 2 years, with the last time being in February, the month before he told me how it started. Get this, it was the day after his graduation with his BA in May 2018, and he was drunk from celebrating and wanted to have sex. I too had been celebrating with him and said I was too drunk to perform and said I'd make it up the next day, then passed out asleep on the couch. Apparently, he was angry and horny because he downloaded Grindr, chatted with this Frankie fellow, and arranged to have sex in his car in a church parking lot across the street from our condo, which happens to be across the street from a school. This fact is important later. All while I slept on the couch. All the times they hooked up after that was again in my condo while I was working or visiting a friend for the night up the coast. He used to love going but started saying he couldn't occasionally because of homework and studying. I absolutely lost it, told him to get in the car, and I drove him to his family's house so he could tell them what he did, so they understood why he was moving back into their house. While he was in the house, I was in the driveway on the phone with AT&T ordering the 3 years' worth of detailed call and text logs, then made an appointment to be screened for STIs. I suspended his service until he could figure out how to pay for his own damn phone. Then I temporarily changed all his passwords on the social media accounts he cheated with and to make sure he couldn't hide more evidence, so only I would have access to his cloud we shared. Each other's passwords on his suggestions years before. I also called the bank and issued a stop payment on his final tuition check that I had sent to the certification program the week before and hadn't hit the bank yet. Before deleting his social media except Facebook, I took screenshots of the entire Instagram conversation with his ex and mailed the conversation to his fiancée, who deserved to know so she could see a doctor and get tested too. His family was very religious and had kicked him out in high school for 3 days when he tried to admit he was gay and only took him back in when he took it back. Needless to say, she ended it. He got kicked out. One down. He came back out to the car and we went home. I took his house key and told him to say goodbye to our 3 pets and get packing. The entire time he packed, I studied those phone records to find out dates, times, and if there was anyone else he was leaving out. He answered every question I asked, and it was then that I discovered that the sex offender and he had only had oral sex in my home and that the actual sex was in the same parking lot he screwed the Frankie guy in. Wheels started turning, and the next day I walked over to the church and sure enough spotted a camera. I spoke to a secretary, a sweet old lady at the church, and informed them about a registered sex offender having sex in their lot and that not only was it a violation of his parole for indecent exposure, but that he was not allowed to be that close to a school. I provided the date. I was in luck. They had a digital 2-year loop system that started deleting day by day after it had been retained for 2 years. It was April 2020, and he first cheated with Frankie in May 2018, and the sex offender was in April 2019. I told him I was filing a police report and that probation would require a copy of it. Eventually, They said they would save the file and allowed me a thumb drive of both days to submit with my police report within a month. The sex offender was locked up again. 2 down. I also filed a police report against the Frankie guy. The police said it was a relatively minor infraction, but since it was across from a school playground and skate park, they would follow up, but there would be no jail time. I researched the hell out of Frankie and called him to confront him. He was smug and admitted to knowing about me the whole time. What he didn't know is that I had found out he had a job that required a security clearance and he had several judgments against him, and collection agencies had been looking for him. Best dollar I ever spent on a data collection site like Been Verified. I didn't know why they couldn't find him and just garnish his wages, but it ends up he was Hispanic and had 2 last names and was a junior, plus he frequently went by his middle name, Francisco, Frankie for short, so he got lost in the paperwork confusion. I sent a letter to the collection agencies providing his employer and current location and contact info, and then sent a copy of the police report about misdemeanor indecent exposure for which he pled guilty, and it was a fine with community service. Not considered a sex crime. His wages did get garnished, but only for 2 paychecks because the misdemeanor was enough for him to lose his security clearance and get fired. 3 down. Then I contacted Ryan's family on his mother's side, pretending to be him from his Facebook account, making sure they knew what happened between him and his cousin. It spread through the family like wildfire, and soon his cousin was contacting me because he couldn't get a hold of Ryan to ask why he would expose what they did. I just laughed and said you shouldn't screw your cousins, especially when they're engaged, and that he'd messed around in my house, so now it was my turn for payback. 4 down. Lastly, I had already stopped payment, but since he was so close to finishing, I was sure his family would bail him out and pay the university. Like I said, indecent exposure is usually a slap on the wrist type misdemeanor. However, I remembered some of the paperwork he signed to be a mandated reporter that you could lose teaching certification for documented acts of moral turpitude. I sent a copy of both police reports from the parking lot with still shots from the security footage clearly showing Ryan's face to the school district he'd been student teaching in and a copy to the Commission on Teacher Credentials. 5th and final down. Admittedly, I did all this out of anger, but he shattered my sense of self-worth and made me incredibly bitter and untrusting. After years of being generous and supporting him, everywhere I looked in the town I thought of Ryan and the cheating. I felt a terrible energy in my condo knowing it all happened there. I stayed 9 months and watched all 5 of their lives self-destruct, then sold my condo, making a nice profit, and relocated to the PMW to start over. One thing that is sad is I found out just recently that his ex, whose fiancée broke up with him, ended up committing suicide several months after I moved. It is too bad that his family was so closed-minded to turn on their own son. But in the end, it's not my fault that he cheated on his fiancée by coming into my home at my fiancée's invitation to cheat. Suicide is never the answer to one's problems, and I hope the fiancée he cheated on doesn't blame herself and that only his family does as they should. TLDR, I emotionally and financially supported my ex through college and his teacher credential program for over 7 years, only to discover he had cheated on me with 4 different guys, one of them the day after he graduated and then occasionally for nearly 2 years in my home while I was at work. I took my revenge. My ex lost his career before it even started and our relationship. One AP, a fair partner, lost his job and had bill collectors after him. Another lost his fiancée and was kicked out. A third was humiliated when his entire family found out he had sex with his cousin, and the 4th was put in jail for violating probation. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Secretly, I gathered evidence of my wife's affairs for a month before blindsiding her with divorce papers. Now, her mom is mad at me. My wife, 29 of 7 years, had cheated on me with one of her longtime friends in mid-July. I discovered text messages back and forth between them after getting suspicious and finally checking her phone. The texts I read were from a day after D-Day about how good their lovemaking SIGs was, I love you, and even discussing a mild fight we had where she recounted things I said, and they both laughed about it. I tried to explain that we may be entering a new stage of marriage where we're comfortable and complacent. It might feel a little boring, but maybe that's just how things get once you're married for more than a few years. But she is convinced that is wrong and we've drifted apart despite spending our days together full of good conversation, good sex, etc. She doesn't know that I know. I've talked to a lawyer and have divorce papers in the works. Note, this is the second time she did this. The first time she cheated when we were dating. We had a 6-month split, worked things out, got back together and later married. On the rare occasions we talk about her past infidelity, I've told her if she ever does it again, we're done. We've been fine for 6 years with no problems. About a year ago, she began getting a little colder and wouldn't accept my affection. Things like she didn't hug me back at all. I guess this distance culminated in her affair. Fast forward to today. I've known for 3 weeks and have been waiting for paperwork before confronting her. At first, she was clearly not interested in me, but this week she seems to be feeling more guilty about her actions and a little more interested in me. She has been trying to do what she can to make up for her actions in her own way, all without us ever talking about it, like washing dishes, cleaning, cooking, all while refusing any help. It's like she is punishing herself. In my mind, she has completely betrayed me, and I can no longer trust her. She has caused me such pain and cannot possibly love me if she is able to do all that. Financially, we have been okay but struggled a bit because she doesn't want to work. She is finally working for a year, but it's a minimum wage part-time job and barely covers her bills. I feel like I have to pull all the weight and she is not really my equal. At the same time, I still care about her, value the life we built, and worry about what will happen to her. I think she could easily fall into a deep depression. There is really only one way forward, and that is divorce, but I am worried about how she will take it and it will be hard to resist taking her back. I almost wish she would happily leave with her new person. I know I have to divorce her, but I'm not looking forward to the heartbreak, loneliness, and whatever else I can't even predict. How do I do this? Update 1. I found out about my wife cheating and haven't confronted her yet. I want to get everything set up and ready before I do. In an effort to do so, I was able to download a complete text messages log of her conversation with AP. Holy Jesus, she is way more effed up than I thought. So, I originally thought she began cheating in July, but nope. Not only did her affair begin in May, but from March to date, she had another affair. This one involving unprotected sex with a jerk addict. So, the grand total of cheating is 4 dudes now. On to the current AP. First, she established his support by lying to him about our relationship. She told him I insult her and am a man-child, which is not true at all. This gave him justification, so he began manipulating her, telling her she deserves better, that I'm a piece of crap, I'm a child, all kinds of stuff. He actually fancied himself a relationship coach. He would listen to her complaints about me and tell her how I would respond or the reason I did that. The person she is cheating with, telling her how to handle her relationship. What the F? The things she was mad about, I had no idea they bothered her. She never told me. Remember, he has never met me yet. He thinks he can predict all my behavior. This guy prides himself on his control over others. He bragged about it. He thinks he's some relationship master. It's ridiculous. He is a church minister. He bragged about how he helps a team group get closer to God. In one instance, he bragged how he helped a teenager break up with his GF and then did a good job consoling the GF because she was then suicidal. So, she has fallen for this good guy act. Total manipulation, hook, line, and sinker. He refers to her living with me as prison and calls me the idiot while I am the one who hugs her, who pays her bills, who happily greets her when she gets home from work, who values her above all others. I do have to come clean. I value self-improvement very much and believe people should always be striving to improve, but she has not improved at all over the last 10 years. She is overweight, dropped out of college, working a minimum wage part-time job. Years ago, I tried to get her to improve. I asked her to go to the gym with me, do a sport, anything, but she refused. She was unemployed for 4 years while I paid her student loan and an alarmingly high credit debt. I asked her to find a job every week. She never did. I asked her to go to school. I'd pay. She can study anything she wants. She never went. After a few years of requesting her to work on herself, I slowly got frustrated to where I began criticizing her for her lack of effort. Sometimes I was so frustrated with it. I was mean about it. This was very wrong of me. I stopped all my criticizing a few years ago before her affairs began. She truly loved me even when I was still meanly criticizing, yet now that I'm not, she didn't love me. My criticizing didn't come from a place of hate. I believe that a marriage is a partnership that should be equal, that she should be my equal. I wanted to help her gain equality in our relationship, but she didn't want it. I think we are supposed to be able to lean on each other for support, yet she leaned on me only. Now that I'm in school and need some support, she has completely fallen apart, which manifests in affairs and resentment, all without addressing her issues with me. She has a problem with me. She brings it to AP, and he tells her what I will probably say. She told her mom about her affair and tried to say how bad I was to her, but she didn't believe my wife. My wife got angry that her mom wasn't on her side, complained about it to AP, who quickly took her side and rationalized her mom's stance. My wife is looking for someone to agree with her to justify the awful things she's done to me. She feels shame and hides it by convincing herself how terrible a person I am. She has very little emotional intelligence and barely pays attention to me. Can't read me at all, yet she is an open book to me. Her mental image of me is not at all who I really am. She is stuck on the person I used to be, but I've changed a lot over the last few years, but she never noticed. She won't leave me because she knows she has it super cush with me. She told AP if she leaves me, she is nothing. I am a busy student, so I don't have tons of time to give her attention like I used to. I think this is what triggered the cheating. If anything else challenges her as a priority for me, she goes wildly unstable. So here we are today. I've read all her crap. She still has no idea I am aware of her despicable ways. I have divorce papers coming Wednesday and counting the minutes until I can blow up a world. I was going to try to do things nicely, but now after reading it all I want to go scorched earth. I want her to really understand the depth of her horrible behavior. I posted last week. I was not looking forward to it, but now I am. I can't wait to read her texts with AP back to her and show her just how effed up it is. I can't wait to point out all the OB manipulation AP has done with her. I am looking for support for my situation and possible solutions to a dilemma. We have a dog that she is obsessed with like a child and will fight tooth and nail for, but neither of us has money to fight it over in court. So, how can I keep my dog without incurring $30,000 in court lawyer fees? Yes, she is crazy enough to do that over the dog. I am thinking I can somehow serve her papers and leave with my stuff and the dog the same day before she gets the papers. Problem, there is that I live at school, which I need to be back for in September. There is a lot more to this, but the texting with AP is like literally 100 pages, so this is very condensed. Update 2. I guess I got ahead of myself with that 3-day countdown. The papers took a lot longer than I was told. Well, now I have them and all the pieces are starting to fall into place. I am planning to have her served a week from today, but as we all know, things may not play out exactly as planned. My soon-to-be ex-wife still has no idea that I discovered her cheating over a month ago and have been planning for our separation. I've been living with her and acting like nothing is wrong for this whole time, and she is completely oblivious. It has actually been difficult to not catch her. I've seen her texting him and would have caught her 15 times over at this point. She never even changed her password, and she still talks about him like he is just a friend of hers. It can be hard to keep my cool when she is talking about him, but I do what I have to do. Sometimes I feel like secretly plotting against her to pull the rug out from under her is wrong. Not wrong to do to her, but immoral for me to do something like this, regardless of who is on the receiving end. Some days it is difficult to hide that I am angry with her about what she did. Some days it feels like some weird dream I'm living in. We had a big fight about our relationship in which I was able to call her out on lots of her poor choices without giving up the fact that I know about everything. I told her she didn't love me and that I haven't been important to her for a long time. That was a week ago, and I've been using that big fight as a cover. So now, if I am angry or cold, she thinks it is because of that big fight we had. I was the only thing holding our relationship together, and now that I know about her infidelity, I have no reason to put in any effort. As a result, our relationship has drastically fallen apart. I explained all this to her, and it seems she realized it was true. Since that fight, she seems to have chosen me over her affair partner. This is obviously not how it should be. She chose me when we got married, so there should not even be a choice to be made here. She has been putting more effort into showing me attention and communicating she wants to make things work, But from my perspective, way too little, way too late. There is nothing she can do to change the situation she put us in. She made her bed. Now she has to lie in it. This infidelity began because her position as the absolute center of my life was challenged. Her large amount of attention for me, from which she derives happiness, was challenged. So she sought the attention elsewhere rather than communicating with me. What I find truly hilarious is that the men she has chosen to have affairs with don't treat her as number one either. One guy regularly ignored her for weeks. The other guy has an ex-wife and child that he even told her would always be his priority. He's even been seen around town with other girls. Remember that this guy is a youth pastor also, so she is not even number two to this guy, even though they tell each other how special their relationship is. He even told her he plans on moving to co-parent his kid with his ex. But none of that matters to her. How is she okay with that, but can't handle me focusing on school as a response to our big fight? She decided she will be staying with her parents for a few weeks to clear her head. This makes things way easier for me. I don't have to worry about her refusing to leave or attacking me or any other crazy things she may do. She already has plans to come back. Little does she know, I have arranged for her to get divorce papers served the day after she gets to her parents. So I have a week to go, and it can't be over soon enough. As much as I want it to be over, it means this is also the last week I will ever see my dog. It really sucks. We are super attached, but I have no hope of keeping him. There are some special circumstances that I don't want to explain, but it's basically impossible for me to keep him. I am going to miss him a lot. Update 3. It has been a long month. I wanted to call her out so badly. It was on the tip of my tongue, but I never did because it would make things difficult for me. So, I hit the gym, lawyered up, got papers drafted, collected over 450 pages of explicit messaging, set up a new debit account ready to transfer funds, and convinced her to take some time at her parents' house. Everything, and I mean everything, went to plan. I even predicted the exact reaction her and family would have. I froze her credit card with my name and transferred half our money to the new debit account as soon as I heard the papers were delivered. She left yesterday with her mom. I just gave her a hug and said, "Take care of yourself." She said, "Okay." This morning, a process server arrived at her parents' home and delivered the papers. She had no idea I knew what she was doing. Her parents claimed they had no idea about anything. She got completely blindsided and was apparently hysterical. I say hysterical because, get this, I still haven't talked to her. Yep, her mom called me and I had to explain the situation to her. Just high-level details though. Even in a situation like this, her mom is trying to solve the problems for her. It's absolutely ridiculous. I can't even discuss my personal relationship with my wife privately. This is a 29-year-old woman who is letting her mom mediate and talk on her behalf. Although I did have a good relationship with my mother-in-law, and she did push my wife to work on our marriage, I find this so beyond idiotic of them both. I handled everything with tact, kept my composure, and didn't let my emotions do the talking. I had to really bite my lip though. My mother-in-law, in discussing getting her wife's things, was using language that implied I was responsible for getting her stuff back to her. Suggested I pack the stuff, rent a car, and drive the 4 hours to deliver it. The stuff in question is mostly t-shirts and lotion bottles, so I told her it is not my responsibility. She comes back with, "If you respect me so much like you say you would do me the favor." Oh man. Not only is she getting way too far into our business, but she is going to try to manipulate me. I just said that has nothing to do with this, and I could say the same thing to you. Please don't attempt to manipulate me again. I'm already giving you lots of respect here by keeping a lot of issues off the table. I can decide to bring it to court and prove infidelity, costing us both a lot of money. I can claim theft of our dog. I can give evidence to her AP's employer, which will get him fired from his youth pastor position and others. I'm trying to make this as affordable and simple as possible. She backed down and will be picking up the stuff now. I have to wait for them to make a move. I'm guessing they are trying to hire a lawyer and refute the dog ownership, which is the biggest fighting point, yet oddly not brought up. Her mom is probably comforting her and telling her that her multiple illicit affairs are okay, that dragging her husband through the mud, talking crap about him whatever chance she gets, even while still coming home at night and expecting love and affection, is all okay. Someone in another thread mentioned she might have borderline personality disorder based on some stuff she said. I think she does. Is it odd that they are so worried about such insignificant belongings right now? Yes, it is. Is it odd my wife is not handling this with me? Yes. Should I refuse to deal with her mom? Maybe. Is my wife mentally unstable? So, do I let them come get her stuff? I don't really want to deal with that. I hate all of this. I am being straightforward and honest with them, and they are trying to pull some crap on me. I hate that I might have to resort to twisting their arm. I hate that I have always been a meal ticket for my wife and just the idiot paying her bills to her parents. I hate that I can't even discuss this with her civilly and rationally like adults. I hate that her mom lied to me about not knowing her daughter had affairs. I hate that they are so confused by my actions. I hate that I instinctively think of her and want to ask her what kind she wants when I see ice cream at the store. But most of all, I hate how even now I am the bad guy to them. Update 4. 2 years after the divorce, I noticed a few messages asking how everything eventually turned out with my situation. In a nutshell, good. It was a clean break. Absolutely zero communication, no issues whatsoever. She moved on. I moved on. That's it. It was essentially a very, very expensive breakup. The single one thing that sucks is I had to give up my dog. But looks like he is still living happily with her after the divorce. I graduated, got a job, and moved. She moved to her parents' guest bedroom and never moved out. She got a low-wage job and hasn't done a thing since. She is dating someone. That's all I know because she has me blocked, even though I've never said a thing. I dated a couple of girls. Found one that was extremely special and showed me love I didn't know existed. Then I proceeded to lose her, so I'm single and doing extremely well with dating. Literally, every single woman I met has been leagues better than my ex-wife, but would like to be back with my recent GF. Love again. Such is life. Got a great job, doing very well financially, while she is 30-something living with her retired parents. So, I guess I came out on top and relatively unscathed. Update 5. So, it has been 4 years since I found out about my ex-wife having multiple secret affairs. She was able to do so without much suspicion because I gave her the respect of privacy and was busy working through a degree at an Ivy League school while also paying all the rent, bills, food, and both of our student loans. A lot of the confusion and anger I faced, and most people posting here probably currently has, been cleared. In fact, I don't care about my ex-wife at all. I care more about more recent exes who showed me more kindness. But there is still a mystery to me why someone would cheat when they are with someone that is out of their league. This is not something I knew at the time, but has been repeatedly pointed out to me in countless ways, and sometimes directly by others. Why she cheated will probably always be a mystery. I am well above average looking. I was always home at night, spending my free time with her. I am highly educated, physically fit, no mental illness, decently charismatic, and set up for a very good career. We got along well and had a lot in common. On paper, it seemed like many boxes were checked. Obviously, there are many intangible aspects that determine why someone cheats, but I occasionally dwell on this question, laugh to myself, and move on with my day. I have since dated a handful of women, all lovely and interesting people who have helped me fully understand just how crap my ex-wife was as a person. Since she was one of the first people I dated in high school, I didn't have much comparison. Oh, and all those affair partners she was hopelessly confessing her undying love for are long gone. So here I am, 4 years later, leaving my past long behind. I have rebuilt my life from the ground up. Next week is my 2-year anniversary with my lovely, caring, intelligent, and beautiful girlfriend. She is the kind of partner I always deserved, and I make sure she knows how much I appreciate her every day. She's even got a job that she's good at and pays her well. We have an apartment next to the river and a goofy dog. My career and finances are strong and well within upper middle class territory. No debt, no alimony, and no contact. On a few occasions, I have thought about her and realized I don't hate her anymore. I don't wish harm nor goodwill towards her. I just don't care. Okay, well, maybe I hope things generally don't work out for her. I can now say that I am much happier and better off by my decision to divorce my ex-wife. So, there is hope for all of you out there that are currently knee-deep in crap trying to make it through the day. Have faith in yourself to come out the other side as a wiser and stronger person. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My father abandoned me after my mom died and went to live with my aunt and her kid. Now, after 16 years, my aunt's kid has thrown him out, and he wants to live with me. I'm a 36-year-old woman living alone in my late mother's home. I have a good job and a stable life. My boyfriend lives in another state, but he's very supportive. Everything was going smoothly until last night when I got an unexpected call from my father, Andrew. I was relaxing after work when my phone rang. I saw it was my dad and hesitated before answering. We hadn't spoken in months. When I picked up, I heard sobbing on the other end. It took a few moments before my father could speak. "I'm so sorry," he said between sobs. "I know I have no right to ask this, but I need your help." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What's going on, Dad?" He explained that my Aunt Claudia, my mom's sister, had kicked him out of her house. He'd been living with her for the past 16 years, ever since my mom died. Now he was staying in some rundown place and didn't know what to do. "Old now," he said. "I can't take care of myself like I used to. I was wondering, is there any chance I could come stay with you? Just until I figure something out." I was stunned. A flood of emotions hit me all at once. Anger, hurt, confusion. I told him I needed time to think about it and hung up. Now I'm sitting here trying to process everything. My mind keeps going back to 16 years ago, when I was just 20 years old. My mom had died after a long battle with cancer. I was devastated, lost, and in desperate need of support. But instead of being there for me, my dad packed up and left to go live with Claudia. Claudia was a single mom with a young kid at the time. I guess my dad decided her family needed him more than I did. He completely neglected me after that. No calls, no visits, nothing. I had to figure everything out on my own. Those first few years were so hard. I was barely an adult, suddenly living alone in this big empty house. I had to learn how to manage bills, cook for myself, and deal with my grief all at the same time. I was in college, trying to keep up with classes while also working part-time jobs to make ends meet. Not many family members stepped up to help. A few distant relatives sent sympathy cards, but that was about it. My mom's parents had passed away years before, and my dad's family lived far away. I felt so incredibly alone. I remember crying myself to sleep many nights, wondering why my dad had abandoned me. What had I done wrong? Wasn't I important to him? The hurt and rejection were overwhelming, but somehow I managed to get through it. I threw myself into my studies and work. I made a few close friends who became like family to me. Slowly but surely, I built a life for myself. After college, I landed a good job in marketing. I worked hard and moved up in the company. I started traveling, pursuing hobbies, dating. A few years ago, I met my current boyfriend. He's amazing, kind, supportive, understanding. We're in a long-distance relationship now due to our jobs, but we make it work. Financially, I'm in a good place. I paid off my student loans, I have savings, and I'm able to take nice vacations now and then. I've done a lot of work on the house over the years, updating and redecorating it. It feels like my own space now, filled with happy memories instead of sadness. I thought I had moved on from the pain of my past. I rarely thought about my dad anymore. The last time we spoke was at Christmas when he called to wish me happy holidays. Our conversations are always short and superficial. And now this, after 16 years of absence, he wants to move in with me. I don't even know how to begin processing this request. Part of me is that hurt 20-year-old girl, angry at being abandoned. Why should I help him when he wasn't there for me? He made his choice back then. He chose Claudia and her kid over me. Now that arrangement has fallen through, and suddenly he remembers he has a daughter. But another part of me feels guilty. He is my father after all, and he sounds desperate. What if he ends up homeless? Could I live with myself knowing I turned him away in his time of need? I'm also worried about how this would impact my life. I've worked hard to create a peaceful, stable environment for myself. Having my dad move in would completely disrupt that. What about my relationship? My boyfriend and I like to spend time together at my place when he visits. That would be awkward with my dad around. And what about the long-term implications? Is this a temporary thing? Or would he expect to live with me indefinitely? He mentioned being old and unable to care for himself. Does that mean he needs a caretaker? I'm not equipped for that emotionally or practically. There's also the issue of Claudia. I'm curious about what happened there. Why did she kick him out after all this time? Is there something I should know? I haven't spoken to her in years either. I feel like I need more information before I can make a decision, but I'm also afraid of getting sucked back into family drama that I've worked so hard to distance myself from. Part of me wants to just say no, to tell him that he made his choice 16 years ago and now he has to live with the consequences. But I worry that's just my hurt and anger talking. I don't want to be a cruel person. I've thought about calling some friends for advice, but I'm embarrassed. I've never told anyone the full story of what happened with my dad. It's always been too painful to discuss. My boyfriend knows some of it, but not everything. I'm considering reaching out to Claudia to get her side of the story, but I'm nervous about opening that can of worms. What if she tries to guilt me into taking him in? Or what if I learn things about my dad that make me feel even worse? I keep thinking about what my mom would want me to do in this situation. She always taught me to be kind and forgiving, but she also believed in standing up for yourself and not letting people take advantage of you. I'm not sure which principle applies here. There's also a small, childish part of me that sees this as an opportunity. Maybe if my dad lives with me, we can repair our relationship. Maybe he'll finally be the father I needed all those years ago. But I know that's probably just wishful thinking. People don't change that dramatically, especially not at his age. I'm worried about anger building if I do let him move in. What if I agree and then regret it? What if all those old feelings of anger and abandonment come rushing back? I've worked hard on my mental health over the years. I don't want to undo all that progress. There's also the practical side to consider. My house isn't that big. Where would he sleep? Would I need to buy extra furniture? What about food and other expenses? Would he contribute financially or expect me to cover everything? I'm trying to imagine what my daily life would look like with him here. Would he expect me to cook for him and do his laundry? Would he respect my space and privacy? Would he try to parent me or criticize my lifestyle choices? The more I think about it, the more overwhelmed I feel. This decision feels impossibly huge. Whatever I choose, it's going to have a major impact on my life. If I say yes, I'm opening myself up to potential hurt and disruption. I'd be taking on a big responsibility that I never asked for. But I'd also be doing what some might consider the right thing. If I say no, I get to maintain my independence and the life I've built for myself, but I risk feeling guilty and wondering if I made the right choice. What if something happens to him and I could have prevented it? I wish I had someone to talk to about all this, someone who could offer an objective perspective. Maybe I should consider seeing a therapist to help me work through these feelings and make a decision. For now, I think I need to take some time to process everything. I don't want to make a rash decision based on emotion. I need to think carefully about what I want and what I can realistically handle. I'm planning to call my dad back tomorrow and ask for more details about his situation. I want to know exactly what happened with Claudia, what his current living situation is like, and what his expectations are if I were to let him stay here. I also think I need to have a serious conversation with my boyfriend about all this. His opinion matters to me, and this would affect him too if he spends time at my place. Part of me wishes my dad had never called, that I could go back to my peaceful life and pretend this never happened. But I know that's not possible. One way or another, I have to deal with this. I keep reminding myself that I'm not that helpless 20-year-old girl anymore. I'm a strong, independent woman who has overcome a lot. Whatever I decide, I know I can handle it. I've been handling things on my own for 16 years now. As I sit here in my mom's old house, my house now, I feel a mix of emotions. Sadness for the family I lost, pride in what I've accomplished, anxiety about the future, but mostly I feel determined to make the best decision I can, whatever that may be. I know I don't owe my dad anything. He wasn't there for me when I needed him most. But I also know that holding on to anger and resentment isn't good for me. Maybe this is an opportunity for growth and healing. Or maybe it's an opportunity to set firm boundaries and prioritize my own well-being, to show myself the love and protection that my father didn't provide. Either way, I know this won't be an easy decision, but I've faced tough choices before and come out stronger. Whatever happens, I'll get through this too. I just need time to think, gather more information, and listen to my heart. For tonight, I'm going to try to relax and not make any decisions. I'll call my boyfriend, watch some TV, and try to get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow is another day, and I'll face this challenge with a clear head and a strong spirit. Life has thrown me another curveball, but I'm ready to step up to the plate. I've built a good life for myself, and I won't let anyone, not even my dad, take that away from me. Whatever I decide, it will be on my terms, for my reasons. I'm not that abandoned 20-year-old anymore. I'm a capable adult who can handle difficult situations and make tough choices. I just hope I make the right one. Update. After posting about my dilemma, I decided to talk to my boyfriend and get more information from my dad. I wanted to approach this rationally and make an informed decision. I called my boyfriend first. He's always been a great source of support, and I value his opinion. I explained the situation to him and asked what he thought I should do. True to his nature, he was understanding and supportive. "Honey, this is a really personal decision," he said. "I can't tell you what to do. Whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. If you want him to move in, we'll make it work. If you don't, that's okay too. I'm here for you either way." His response was comforting, but it also meant the decision was entirely on my shoulders. I thanked him for his support and told him I'd keep him updated. Next, I called my dad. I needed to know more about what had happened with Claudia and why he was in this situation now. When he picked up, he sounded relieved to hear from me. I cut straight to the point and asked him to explain everything. What he told me made my blood boil. Apparently, over the past 16 years, he had been working and earning a decent amount. But instead of saving for his future or, helping his own daughter, he spent everything on Claudia and her kid. He paid for their living expenses, funded the kids' education, even bought them a car. He said he felt obligated because Claudia had taken him in, but now that her child was grown and working, Claudia had asked him to leave. According to my dad, her kid didn't want the responsibility of taking care of an old man. As I listened, I felt a mix of emotions. Hurt, anger, disbelief. All those years when I was struggling, working multiple jobs to pay for college, living on ramen noodles and crying myself to sleep, my dad had money. He could have helped me, but he chose to support Claudia and her child instead. I thought about the nights I stayed up late studying, the weekends I worked instead of going out with friends, the constant stress of wondering if I'd make rent. All while my dad was playing happy families with Claudia, forgetting he had a daughter who needed him. The realization hit me hard. Not only had he abandoned me emotionally, but he had also chosen to financially support someone else's family while leaving me to fend for myself. Felt like a second betrayal. In that moment, any guilt or obligation I felt towards him disappeared. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly into the phone. "Dad," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I've heard enough. I'm sorry you're in a difficult situation, but I won't be able to help you. You need to figure this out on your own." He started to protest, but I cut him off. "For 16 years, you chose Claudia and her child over me. You supported them financially while I struggled alone. You made your choice back then, and now you have to live with the consequences." My dad's voice cracked as he began to apologize, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. "Please don't call me again," I said. "I wish you the best, but I can't be part of your life anymore. Goodbye, Dad." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt like I had stood up for myself against my father's neglect. I know some might think I'm being cruel, but I don't see it that way. I'm protecting myself and the life I've built. I'm choosing my own well-being over someone who never chose me. I called my boyfriend back and told him what happened. He was supportive as always, telling me he was proud of me for making a tough decision. We talked for a while, and his words helped reinforce that I'd made the right choice. Now, as I sit in my home, the home I've maintained and improved on my own for 16 years, I feel a mix of sadness and strength. I'm sad for the relationship I'll never have with my father, but I'm proud of myself for setting boundaries and prioritizing my own well-being. I don't know what will happen to my dad now, and part of me feels guilty about that. But a larger part knows that I'm not responsible for him. He's an adult who made his own choices, and now he has to deal with the results of those choices. Moving forward, I'm going to focus on the people who have been there for me. My boyfriend, my friends, and most importantly, myself. I've taken care of myself for 16 years, and I'll continue to do so. This experience has been difficult, but it's also been clarifying. I now know where I stand, and I'm no longer carrying the weight of what if on my shoulders. I'm free to continue building my life on my own terms, without the shadow of my father's neglect hanging over me. It's not the happy ending I might have once hoped for, but it's the right ending for me. And for the first time in a long time, I feel at peace with my family situation. Whatever the future holds, I know I can handle it. After all, I've been handling things on my own for 16 years now, and I've done pretty well for myself. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I am done, and I am heartbroken. I have no one, not even my own family. I have been married for 15 years. I have known my wife since I was 8. We have 3 daughters together, 17, 14, and 11. I'm tired of feeling like I'm an outsider in my relationships with all of them. I'm just an ATM and taxi service to my kids. My wife hasn't kissed me in 6 months. She has not said that she loves me in 1.5 years. No matter how much I communicate, try to plan anything or do anything, it is always shot down, forgotten, or dismissed. I don't get angry and don't yell. I don't get physical. I like to splurge during birthday and Mother's Day. I throw parties and give gifts and try to show how much I love them. I get a look, a warm thanks, and if I'm lucky, a side hug that lasts 0.00001 seconds. This week was the breaking point. Father's Day, I wake up to an empty house. Odd, no note, nothing was written on the calendar, and nothing said beforehand. I send a text and I get back, I took the girls out for a spa day. Don't wait up. Then nothing, literally nothing. Dinner time comes around and they get home. How was their day? It was fine. I asked what they would like for dinner. Nothing. We already ate at one of my favorite restaurants. Cool, whatever. There is no mention of it being Father's Day. No, I love you. How are you? Nothing. Fast forward to Wednesday, which was my birthday. Nothing, literally again, nothing. I suggested plans. They get shot down. I suggested food. Nope, shot down. Ask about watching a movie. They are all too busy. They just sat on their phones doing nothing. Now to Thursday night. I'm in bed. My wife is next to me. She rolls over and says in a crappy tone, "Oh, your birthday was the other day. I guess you expect to have sex." That broke something in me. Best of my memory of how it went down, I said, "No, I don't expect sex at this point. I don't expect anything anymore." Her, "What is that supposed to mean?" So I started asking her questions. "When was the last time we shared a kiss?" "Like a week." "Nope, it was in December, and it was during her parents' holiday party." "When was the last time we had sex?" "The beginning of the year." "Nope, wrong. It has been over a year." She was adamant that we did it in February. I was dealing with my mom's health and her passing, so I said something like, "You may have had sex, but it wasn't with me." "When was the last time you said you love me?" "I say it all the time." "Not to me." "Check your messages." "Estelle, you don't say it to me face to face." "Well, you should just know I do." "When was the last time we went on a date?" Long pause. Her, "You're being unfair." Emotions turned on fully. I was crying and raising my voice at this point. It asks her how she can't answer. I asked her how wanting any sign of love from anyone in the house is unfair. If expecting anything from my birthday or Father's Day was unfair. She got an oh shit look. "Yeah, you forgot that as well. I'm not an ATM. I'm not a taxi service. I'm not a punching bag." She asked why this was coming up out of the blue. Didn't. I have tried to talk to my family and again get dismissed or ignored. I brought up examples. I got, "And I didn't know you were serious. I didn't know it was such a big deal." I left saying something to the point of, "If you want to pretend that I'm invisible and don't exist, fine. You don't have to pretend anymore." I left the house at almost midnight on Thursday SL Friday morning. Haven't been home since. I'm not sure what to do now. I'm finally sober enough to think, but I don't know what to do. First time drinking in over 15 years by the way, and I'm not going to drink anymore. I love my family, but I can't keep this up. I don't know what more I can do. I think they would be happier without me. They already act like I don't exist. I can't be the one who is blamed for everything. If I truly am the problem, then me not being there should fix it. I can't do it anymore. I have tried to be a good provider, a good partner, and a good dad. Never missed an event of our kids. Never prioritized work. I kept good hours so I could see them more. Took on more responsibility to better our life in the future. But it is never appreciated. It is never enough. I am never enough. I only have one message from my wife. I'm sorry for making you feel that way. We all love you. And we are here for you when you want to come home and talk. That is it. No other message, no calls, nothing from the kids. I feel like if they really wanted me there, they would try reaching out more. All of the kids have their own phone. I don't know what she told them. I'm sure they heard me raise my voice. Me raising my voice would have definitely got their attention since I never do. I'm sure they heard me leave. I just don't know. Thanks everyone. I did not think anyone would care. You have given me some hope and advice I'm going to look into. I don't know how to respond to a lot of the comments. I know how to, just not in words. I'm going to try to figure things out more. I'm now 100% sober, so my mind is clearer. I'm going to start meeting with people on Monday and try to come up with options. Update 1. I have not been well, but I'm doing better. You guys have helped me a lot, and it means more than you know. I was able to get help through my work. They have resources for both therapy as well as legal counsel. But somehow my boss found out I was reaching out and now won't leave me alone. But that's unimportant. I know she only has good intentions. So far, I like the new therapist. I was able to get an appointment with her. I thought there would be a long wait list. She recommended a family/spousal therapist as she focuses more on individuals. I talked to them as well. I got referred to divorce lawyers. I don't want to use them, but I had a talk with them and got an idea of what that route would be like. I'll be like 70% screwed, but we are in a no-fault state, so if it turns out she is cheating, I'll be okay-ish. My kids did reach out after a few days. Is worried. I told them I'm fine, do truly love them, and miss them, but needed space and time. For the first time ever, I missed some of their extracurricular activities. I think that is what made them understand something was really wrong. Some other family members' SL friends noticed and started asking questions to all involved. My kids also mentioned how things were not the same without me around, and my wife was struggling. My wife reached out a few times just checking in, apologizing, giving me updates on things, and a couple of the times she asked about the 4th of July. We usually host a party/barbecue. I said I wasn't interested, but I said that her and I needed to talk alone in person. That happened the weekend after the 4th. Apparently, she was planning the 4th as a surprise, be a party for me after I had left to make up for forgetting my birthday, but I ruined it as I didn't go and wasn't interested. When we met up to talk, she wasn't alone and brought the kids. I was happy to see them. They seemed happy to see me as well, but I asked for my wife and I to talk alone. When I pointed this out, she said the kids missed me and it was fine. We can talk with them here. I believe it was more of a manipulative move. I explained that this was another example of how my feelings are once get ignored and cast aside. How I've been ignored for a while, and how that is not right by anyone. She kept apologizing. I said while I acknowledge the apologies, I don't accept them. Most of the apologies to me feel like they are not real, such as her initial apology of, I'm sorry you feel that way, or they a sound force SL just say on what she thinks I want to hear. Actions speak louder than those empty words. I also said that she is setting an example in expectations on how I'm treated and how our daughters will see and treat me in their future relationships. As of now, no one should be treated this way. I think at this point my wife regretted bringing the kids. My 14-year-old took my 11-year-old for some snacks. My 17-year-old stayed. I flat out asked if there was anyone else, if she was cheating physically, SL emotionally or otherwise. She looked like I just slapped her. She said she would never do that. I asked why she was so adamant about us having sex in February. Daughter left at this point when it has been longer. Why has every part of our romance died within a year span from her part? She didn't know. We talked for an additional 20 minutes. I finally took out 2 folders I had with me. One was a separation document, not quite a divorce, but halfway to it. The other was therapist referrals for individuals and couples. I needed her to understand how serious this situation was. I asked her to look over each other and ask herself what she wanted, but she had to make the decision and schedule the appointments. I explained that I'm done living this way, and if she chooses to stay with me, then there are going to be major changes occurring both in our relationship and at home. I love the woman I married, had kids with, and built a life together, but I don't know where she went. My kids came back, and my 11-year-old was mad I wasn't going back with them that night. I gave my wife time. She contacted me the next day saying she has made appointments for herself and for her and I. She explained that she set up some bi-weekly individual therapy, and we have our first couples therapy early next month. The reason for the wait was so she could establish SL work on herself first. I've been using the gray rock method towards her since the initial incident pair and my therapist's recommendations, so it's still a work in progress. I'm not in as dark of a place as I was when I first posted. Some things are better than it was. I'm willing to put in the work, but it won't be one-sided. There is a plan moving forward, so that's a plus. I've been home for a week now, but I'm sleeping in a different room. Some changes have been put in place already, but time will be the real test. As a side NW on the second night of me being back, she actually tried to initiate sex, but I said no, that it wasn't the time or place for that. We had a lot to work out before that can happen. As always, peace, love, and chicken grease. Update 2. I'm alive and have an update. Trigger warning. Talk of suicide. If you are feeling like attempting or having thoughts of it, please contact a medical professional, family, friends, and hotlines if your county has them. 988 in the U.S. After the first post, I planned and almost committed to ending things that night. For a reminder, I stated, I think they would be happier without me. They already act like I don't exist. I can't be the one who is blamed for everything. I can't do it anymore. I kept going over and over in my head, if I was gone, then their problems would be solved. They could move on with a new dad SL husband who they would love more than me, who they would show more love than they have showed me. I was the cause of everything that went wrong in their life. My wife probably has a replacement that could just step in and be a real dad and husband to them. Something snapped me out of it. Still sounds weird, but it was as if I could see/hear my 11-year-old. She has been the one who has made me feel loved, wanted, and cared for throughout most of this, both before and after I left. From what I now understand, my wife was pushing for them to give me space, but my youngest wouldn't accept it. She kept pushing for them to reach out, track me down, and find me. She had a weird feeling. I initially hid the fact that I was to the point of ending things to my therapist after my last update. I told her she could tell I wasn't as open with her until that point. That changed the tone of our sessions. I have a better understanding and more tools I can use to recognize and help deal with those negative and dark emotions. With that came some diagnosis onto my wife. She did commit to her individual therapy. I started to see some changer in her. She has been treating me better. Things were going in more of a positive direction. I still shut down forward advances from her. I found out her therapist was also telling her to stop and earn my trust, and that we had to rebuild up to that, but that makes her feel unloved and unwanted. Ironic. I looked into it if she was cheating, and I found nothing. No text messages, emails, unexplained expenses, weird locations, absences, photos, apps, nothing. So she is either really good at covering her tracks, or she didn't cheat. I expressed that if it ever came out she did cheat on me, it was over. The first couple of sessions were long ones. The first hour was individual with me, then my wife, then both of us. It was useful and helped, but not much. Same with the second session, which was 2 hours together. And the third session too. This was just after I opened up with my individual therapist about my self-harm thoughts. I just opened up to them and told them everything. Where my head was at, my thoughts at the time, how close I came, what stopped me, how long I had thought about it, everything. My wife looked at me with a sense of horror. She looked at me and started yelling and kept repeating, "How could me/op, be so selfish?" The therapist calmed her down, and I started talking again. I went deeper into how badly my wife and kids hurt me, that there is no way she didn't know about Father's Day or my birthday, how I still suspect that she has been cheating on me, how the dark thoughts started after my mother passed away, and my wife stopped being my wife. I don't know what happened to my wife, the woman I love, disappeared. She has been gone for a while. SL checked out. My wife was loving, playful, honest, trustworthy, a fantastic partner, and the love of my life. I can't be with this stranger she became. I just went off and unloaded. The therapist said we needed a break to cool down and meet back in 5 minutes. I walked out. It was being immature, childish, and in a move, and when I cooled down enough, I saw I had a bunch of missed calls and texts. My 17-year-old ended up picking me up since my car was at home. It was the first time she saw me actively cry. I think that got her to understand how much weight was crushing me, how much their actions have caused me pain. We ended up parked somewhere and just talked. We talked for a long while, more than we had in a long time. I got more out of that conversation than I have in the last few years. We got back home, and my other 2 kids ran to me and hugged me. Not like the side hug, but an actual hug that felt so good. My wife approached me slowly and asked for a hug as well. I gave her half of one, and she started crying. We as a family hung out for a while, and when bedtime came around, my wife asked to talk. She did say that she thought she was losing me around when my mom passed, that I had checked out of our marriage, but didn't go into detail. She said she is still working through some things, and when she has a better understanding herself, she will bring to the table. She then broke down. She said that she really didn't know how bad it was. She is sorry but vowed to do anything she can to make it up to me and be a better partner. She is trying. I do see improvement, but why did it have to get to this point? But now I'm so numb that I keep asking myself if she really meant that or if they are just empty words. I don't know if that is the medication talking or how I'm thinking nowadays. Some days I feel like my mind is like when an old TV has the static because of a bad signal. My kids overall are doing better. I still question the older ones sometimes, but I think it is me overthinking. School and activities are keeping them busy, but one thing that keeps bothering me is I can tell they are walking on eggshells around me. It bothers me. It's like in a jack-in-the-box, and they are waiting for me to pop out at them. Therapies is helping overall. It just takes time. My therapist said it is like I've been an actor playing a character for so long that I don't know how to be myself. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, but I feel the truth in it. I need to find myself first and then work on other relationships. My wife and I did go on a date. She planned it and it was fun. I had a genuine smile, but in the back of my mind, I was wondering if this was for me or for the US. I am not sure what will happen in the future. Time will tell. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My smoking neighbor won't quit it on my driveway. Caution. I don't speak English. I speak Australian bad words and stuff. My closet-quitting neighbor who smokes. My street is usually quiet. We mostly all own our houses except for the odd one in each street that is a rental due to the area improving. We don't have the usual trouble that used to occur. But there are those moments that make things annoying and unpleasant. And the new renter directly across the road from me became one of those unpleasant things that needed to be weeded out. My house is on a slight decline, living on the low side of the street, so my driveway slopes down to my garage. And from the other side, if you sat down there, you're invisible to the prying eyes of the houses on the opposite side. So recently, I started finding cigarette butts around where I place my bins. No biggie. I just started tossing them into it and pondered who the hell has been smoking here. Few days go by, and if I was not at work and on a day off cleaning in the garage, sometimes I would notice my neighbor from across the street pop up on the top end of my driveway, then turn about. This struck me as a little odd. This kept up, and I just kept putting the stray butts in the bin, but it annoyed me. Why smoke here and flick them to the bin? It's less than 2 m from the bin. So I had a chat with the wife. Had she noticed anyone doing this? Despite the obvious disturbed look she gave me, she had no clue. Knew it wasn't anyone here in my house. There's now just the two of us and 8 cats and 2 dogs. They lack opposable thumbs to operate a lighter, so option B. Set up a wireless camera with motion detection and installed the app on my phone to alert me. This was possibly one of the better ideas for the day. Man flew that day. Upon looking at the most security cameras that were available, we settled on UI. Nice little buggers, easy to set up, battery operated, and last for ages. Waterproof to boot. So I hid that little shit under the roof pointing at the gap in the shed door, and it had just enough room to peek at the driveway and bins. Think corner of a square hole with a round peg in it. Nice big gap to see through it. It didn't take long to find where the butts were coming from. The next bloody day he got caught. Brazen as hell, the asshat swaggers down my driveway, puts his arson park on it, and lights one up less than 2 meters from the bins. He smokes that ciggy dry and flicks it at my bins and wanders back to his nest. I had to do something, but first I have to give him a chance. So the next roster day I had off, I signed it with his smoking habit, and I waited for the ping from the app. Sure enough, there he was on rinse and repeat mode. Not wanting to risk startling him and have him scatter like the cockroach he was, I went out the back door and round the side of the house and out towards the front. As I approached, he had just finished up, flicked the butt at the bins, and stood up as he turned around to find me. The proverbial deer in headlights as he spotted me does not quite cover it. What felt like an eternity after he just processed he got busted. "What the hell do you want?" escaped his lips. I just asked, "Mate, if you're going to do that, at least smother the butt and put it in the bin." All this bogan and trash could reply with was, "You don't own this part of the strip. Council does, and you can't make me do anything." Thinking he has won the Olympic gold medal for being a jerk, he shoves past me, walks across the road, and returns to his nest. "No way, no medal for you. Game on." So that camera by UI, it supports dumping events to a NAS network address. Storage files get time and date stamped every time this prick went out to smoke. It secretly took his photo smoking and flicking the butt at the bin. All I had to do was buy bulk Ziploc bags and just dump the butts in them and write the time and date on them. If they wanted evidence, so be it. They can have it. This is what I did for a year. Collect his butts, write the time and date on the bag, and show it to the camera for authenticity and leave so many butts. I wanted this. He wanted this. Who was I to deny him? 365 days in a year. Could I make it that far? The box was just about full of butts and bags. And it's only day 345. So close, but the stench. I had to do it. So I boiled the kettle and made a thermos of coffee. If I have to get up during the reporting of this, it's to pee, and I am not going to do the neckbeard bottle piss. That's just gross. So I sorted through the photos on the NAS drive and started prepping for the reporting. Report a tosser, brilliant website branding. Used it a couple of times before, and it took a few minutes to make a post last time. So logged in and started each one by one of 345, but it had to be done one after one after one. The cycle repeated. 200 to go. 100 to go. 50 on the home stretch. Now was that enough? No. The image of his Olympic gold medal had to be reduced to ashes. He was not going to get away with this. Carpal tunnel be damned, it had to be done. Finally, after the last 50 were done, I felt euphoric, exhausted, and damned proud of myself. So I went to crash in bed. Or so I thought. Ping. WTF. My phone just got an email ping again. Ping. Is a Reddit post going viral? Ping. Oh, it's an email from Report a Tosser confirming the reports, each one individually like I did. Ping. Is this automated, or is some poor human, sorry, whomever that was, the only casualty in the strike was meant to be my neighbor? Ping. FFS. Coming from Android, that little DND switch on an iPhone is awesome. It took a few days, but one day I got the hint something was going down. First, he got a letterbox stuffed with mail. That's weird. The next day was some angry noises coming from the house. Like real loud. It sounded like a huge blow-up between him and his missus. Thankfully, someone who lived next to him called the police. That shut them up for a bit, and then the notice. WTF. What did I do? Oh, they are sending a request for the box of butts. Okay, post them off and be done with it. The final day, I thought I was having a stroke. This can't be real. I've never seen him in a suit. Oh yeah, legal. They wanted the butts. He took the go-to-court option. Now on the website, it specified $250 for an individual per offense, but I had no clue to 345 offenses. Well, let's just say he left for the day and did not return. But eventually, a moving truck turned up, and out came the internals of the house. TV, fridge, sofa bed, angry-looking woman, crying kids. Okay, I feel a little bad for them, but considering who spawned them, not so much. An ounce of regret. Eventually, I found out that he took a plea for community service and a whopping fine over jail time, upon which his wife left him. So does for better or worse not mean anything? But considering what she had, it was probably for the better, and any interaction I had with her was far better than her gold medalist. But that was all I could gather. He's having to burn the candle at both ends for both the fine, community service, and child support. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.